IRS Form SS-8, determination of worker status for purposes of federal employment taxes and income tax withholding. Long story short, in today's day and age, a lot of employees or workers may be wondering why they're being treated as an independent contractor when they think that they're actually an employee of the company that they're working for. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how that distinction is important and how this form plays into it. So basically, we're talking about the difference between being a company employee and being an independent contractor. So while there are a lot of non-tax related items that may be associated with that distinction, for example, state unemployment coverage, employee benefits, that's not the focus of this video or this form. This form simply is to give the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, enough information about an employee or a worker's relationship with the company so that the IRS independently makes a determination on whether or not that worker is in fact a company employee or whether or not they're an independent contractor. So with that said, why is this important? Probably the most important aspect is simply who pays the employer portion of self-employment tax, which also is known as FICA, the Federal Insurance Contribution Amount. That's the combination of Social Security and Medicare tax. So if you're familiar with your paycheck or your Form W-2, you should notice FICA taxes. Usually they're broken down into Social Security tax and Medicare tax. So if you're an employee, you're probably aware that 6.2% of your paycheck, up to a certain amount, goes to fund your Social Security benefits. So when you're retirement eligible or if you claim a disability, you can claim benefits partially because you paid into the system. And then another 1.45% of that goes to pay for Medicare, which everyone ages 65 and older are eligible for. So that's the employee side. Now, the other side is that the employer also pays equal amounts of that Social Security and Medicare tax. So if you're self-employed, you're the employer of yourself. So that means you are responsible for that share of the tax as well. So while a company may choose to elect someone as an independent contractor for budget purposes because they don't want to give them employee benefits, whatever the case may be, the IRS has its independent criteria on how it considers an employee relationship to be that of an independent contractor or an employee of the company. And while we're not going to go into detail on how, I'll just give broad kind of context. So generally speaking, the more independence you have in your ability to do your job, if you have flexibility to work for multiple employers, if you are able to do the same work across different companies, the more flexibility you have with your time, with with whatever you're responsible for, the more likely the IRS would be to consider that you are an independent contractor. Conversely, the IRS is less likely to consider you an independent contractor if there are very specific criteria, if not only your work product has specific criteria, but also the time that you spend doing work, what kind of work you're doing, whether or not you have to wear a uniform, employee benefits, what are other people in similar situations considered, so on and so forth. So you could have a W-2 form and the company sends a copy of this to the IRS and asks for clarification, and they might come back and say, well, this person could be considered an independent contractor. More likely, it's going to be someone who doesn't think that they should be treated as an independent contractor that files this form, sends it to the IRS to get a determination whether or not the IRS in fact agrees that they should be treated as a company employee. So either party can file this form. However, if you are an employee or the worker, you should know that the IRS may disclose some of this information to the company in question. So if you don't want any more of your information given to the company, then you might not want to file this form. Unfortunately, that also means that you kind of accept wherever your current status is. So this is the form that you need to complete if you want to change over from being an independent contractor to being considered an employee. And on the flip side, companies aren't technically supposed to retaliate, but we all know people that have some sort of story about retaliation of some sort. So just keep that in mind. Understand that the IRS will not give your information to the company unless it is actually required for the IRS to make a determination, like to clarify a certain point. There are also important things that you should know. You need to complete the form in full. If you provide incomplete information, the IRS might not be able to process it. Parts 1 through 4 must be explained with clear and concise answers. You don't have to complete Part 5 unless you provide a service directly to customers or unless you're a salesperson. If you can't answer a question, you can enter unknown or does not apply. You must include copies of your tax documents, so your W-2, your 1099s, whether it's an MISC, whether it's an NEC file. MISC used to be what independent contractors got. Now more and more companies are issuing 1099 NEC, non-employee compensation. If you need additional space, you can always attach additional paper to this to complete it. So we'll put the name of the firm. Let's see. So we would just put the firm's fax number, website, area code. On the right-hand side would be the worker's name. Daytime telephone number. Let's just say he works at the company. That's where you can reach him. You can put in an alternate phone number, fax number, employer identification number. If the worker doesn't have an employer identification number, then don't put the worker's employer identification number. Generally speaking, though, this probably is also I'm looking at the instructions just to clarify that you don't put your social security number in. I don't believe that you do. If you need more space for an answer, you would you put the social security number or the employer identification number. So let's go back and let's just put in his social security number and then the firm's EIN, employer ID number. So if the worker is paid for services for a business or an individual not listed above, you would enter that company or individual's name, taxpayer ID number, and address here. And then you would explain the relationship. So again, part 1 is general information completed by, let's just say that the worker is actually doing this. And he's talking about work that's been done all the way from 2023 to the end of 2024. So filing this form doesn't hold up the expiration of the time that you have to claim a refund. So most likely you're either receiving a bill from the IRS, maybe you can't get workers' comp, maybe you were audited, or maybe you believe that you should have gotten a W-2 and instead you got a Form 1099. So now, don't complete the form if for some reason there's a different reason other than Form SS-8. Okay, oops. Apologize for that mishap. It blanked out all of my previous entries, so I'm not going to bother re-entering that. Just know that part 1 goes on to page 2. We're going to go through real quick. Part 2 is the behavioral control. What aspects of your work does the company control? Part 3 is the financial control. Part 4 is the relationship of the worker and the firm. And then finally, part 5 again for service providers or salespeople. So we'll just go through kind of each of these in depth. How many workers are doing the similar services? Let's just say that there's 10. John Doe's kind of heard that most of them are employees. Let's just imagine they applied for the job. Is there any litigation? Yes or no? So, most likely I'll just put yes or no on some of these. How much income? Again, if you have W-2s, if you have pay stubs, if you have contracts, 1099s, you can attach all of that. If there's no income, like a tax form that you were issued, like if they just cut you checks or paid you under the table, then enter the amount of money that you earned for the years in concern. And then if you receive both a W-2 and a 1099, why? For example, in a previous life, I worked for a firm and I eventually became an employee and then a partner. So at the time, there was a year where I received a 1099 NEC, maybe it was a 1099 MISC. And then as I transitioned over to being a W-2 employee, that year I ended up getting both a 1099 and a W-2. So and then briefly describe the firm's business. We sell things. Did the worker receive pay from multiple entities? So it could be, maybe a company got bought by another company, a merged acquisition. If no, then just skip to line 8. If yes, you would have to complete, all right, who's the previous owner, previous taxpayer ID number, why did it change, when did it change, was it a reorg, was it a sale, merger, acquisition? What's the worker's job title? Let's see, salesperson. So John Doe is a widget salesman. He's a salesman supervisor, vice president of sales, whatever you want to call him. And he sells widgets across Texas and Oklahoma. That's Acme's biggest, most valuable territory. So now John Doe is going to say, I believe I'm an employee and they're treating me like an independent contractor. In line 10, you'll explain, did the worker perform any services before or after the dates entered? I'm going to check no, but if yes, you would enter the dates of service and then you would discuss what the differences were. Is the work done under an agreement? Yes, we'll attach a copy of that agreement. Hopefully it's one that was signed by both parties. If the work was done under an oral agreement, you would hit yes here, and then you would describe the details as you understand them. Behavioral control, what specific training? In this case, Acme has a world-class sales training program, so John Doe went through that to become a better salesman. Who gives the worker work assignments? Let's say president of the company, and he sometimes gets them over the phone, sometimes via email, and then sometimes customers. Who determines the method by which the assignments are performed? John is assigned a geographical who's contacted? John. So I couldn't tell you based on what I'm writing here that John would be classified as an employee by the IRS. But if John keeps being pointed at as the contact person, and if John is assigned and John has, autonomy to do this work, well, if he's responsible for it, if he's presented as the face of the company to customers, then it's starting to lean a little bit more towards him being an employee, right? So if he's required to complete reports, he's required to submit TPS reports every month. How frequently does he perform services as needed based on customer demand? Primary services, let's say he's a salesperson. Where are they performed? Customer's location, generally speaking, 100% of the time, so he's a road warrior. Is he required to attend meetings? Sales and staff meetings. Is he penalized if he doesn't attend a meeting? Not really. Is John required to provide personal services? Well, sometimes he does. Sometimes, he goes the extra mile, but most of the time he just has a team a fulfillment team. Can he hire substitutes or helpers? Sure, he can. Does he need to have approval required? Maybe, maybe not. Or if yes, then you would select who does the hiring. Is it the firm? Is it a third-party placement? How does he get help? And then does he have to pay that person out of pocket? And if so, does he get reimbursed? Sure. So in part 3, you'll list the supplies, the equipment. So he needs files, folders, widgets, all provided by the firm. He provides his car so that he can go back and forth. We'll say that there's nothing provided by another party. Does the worker lease equipment, space, or facility? Let's just say that he doesn't. But if yes, all of these questions, if yes, then explain a little bit more. Attach copies of the lease or the statement. Does John incur expenses? Sure. Mileage, let's see. Typical travel costs, right? Are they reimbursed by the firm? Sure. After every trip, John submits an expense report. We'll say in this situation that it's not a third party, it's the firm itself. What type of pay does he receive? Let's just say it's a salary plus commission. Of course, you can check whatever you want, whether it's per piece, whether it's an hourly wage, lump sum. If he's a commission, does the firm guarantee a minimum amount of pay? In this case, no, it's eat what you kill. Can he request advance pay? He can request advance pay every 6 months. Who does the customer pay? In this case, the customer pays the firm. They've got an entire accounting department and accounts receivable. If he pays John, then does John turn around and pay the total amount to the firm? Yes, no, maybe so. Sometimes like if you're an adjuster or an attorney, you might have, a situation where you receive a check and then it goes into escrow and then you split the disbursements from, Part of it goes to your account, part of it goes to the client's account, stuff like that. Does the firm carry workers' comp on the worker? Let's just say they do. Does the worker take a financial risk by performing services? Maybe. I don't know. Can John suffer a financial loss? Sure. If the company does not. Who sets the rate of pay? Let's just say that the company does that. Are benefits made available to the worker? Let's just say that he gets personal days, maybe he gets some insurance benefits. Kind of sounding a little bit more like he might be classified as a worker. Again, this application is not necessarily based in reality. It's simply just kind of going through this form, working through the mechanics. As you complete this form, you should be writing things that are true without the intention of trying to game the system, right? So, if it's true and it feels like it's a statement on your side, absolutely 100% provide as much detail as possible. If it's true and it looks like it might hurt you, you should still provide detail, because you don't know which way this is going to go. You don't know which questions weigh more than others, but the IRS will take everything into consideration and kind of give a preponderance of the evidence to indicate which way or the other. So don't sandbag any one question. Try to give complete information. Can the firm or worker end the work relationship? Sure. Let's just say that it's a no-fault state. Either party can just leave it with 2 weeks' notice. Did John perform similar services for others? No. Was he required to get approval? Is there a non-compete? Maybe. Let's just say that there's a non-compete in place. Does he advertise? No. Does he work or process anything at home? No. How is he introduced to his customers? Well, let's just say that he's a partner. And under whose name are the services performed? Let's just say the firm. And then does he still perform services for the firm? Yep. And then in part 5, you're basically filling this out. So yep, he is responsible for developing new customer. Is he provided leads? Let's just say that the company does. Let's just say that every time the president refers a lead, does the firm set terms and conditions of sale? Let's just say that there's a minimum price and quantity for orders, minimum dollar amount, net 30 terms, whatever the case may be. Are orders submitted and subject to the firm's approval? Yes, no, maybe so. Who determines the worker's sales territory? In this case, the firm did. Did the worker pay for the privilege? Well, let's just say he didn't. Where does he sell the product? He sells it on the road. List the product. We'll just put widgets. Does he sell life insurance full time? No. Does he sell other insurance? No. Does he solicit order from wholesalers? Yes, no, maybe so. What percentage of the time? Let's just say he does 50% business to business and the other 50% to private individuals. And then, is the merchandise purchased by customers for reuse in their business operations? Yes, no, or maybe so. And then you send this off to the IRS. You can find more details about the actual signing of the form and where you file it in our article. Go to teachmepersonalfinance.com, type in IRS Form SS-8, and you should see this form up here. So that's where you get the filing details and additional supplemental information. I would say that I just updated this article because the prior version of this form dates back to 2014. I was going through and noticed that it had been updated in late 2023, so I figured I'd update it. Not a whole lot of significant changes. Some of the questions were kind of restructured, but basically the IRS has been asking for the same information since the dawn of time. And again, in today's day and age with the side hustle economy or the gig economy, there are lots of places where you could do work in one area and you think you're being treated as an employee, and you go somewhere else and you find out that you're being treated as an independent contractor for the exact same work. So, if you are interested in kind of understanding a little bit more, you should probably sit down and really think about your relationship with the company that you work for. If you feel like you've got lots of flexibility to work for other firms and your work is kind of accepted on your time frame, you're probably going to be more likely to be considered an independent contractor. But if you're given assignments and they're pretty firm and you have a lot of time that you can take off, but the company is kind of adamant about you doing certain things, or you have to wear a uniform, or you have to show up at a certain time, or you have to be on certain calls, then that starts to make you feel more like an employee. Again, there's no real code to break here. I mean, I guess you can Google the Internal Revenue Manual and go through it detail by detail, but your best bet is to just fill this form out honestly, completely, and then provide all the supporting documentation as requested, and then file it with the IRS and let the IRS determine it. So we'll put links in the show notes to resources we've created about other forms mentioned here. So if you like our articles, please subscribe to our newsletter. If you like our YouTube videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, if you have an idea for an upcoming video, please hit me up in the comments section. Thank you very much and have a great day.